So to answer that question, to change the number of rows that are displayed in your data frame or your series when you try to display the whole thing, you can set this pd.set option display height and display max rows to something bigger than 60, and you can whatever you prefer. It'll get your notebook could get a little more messy, but you can always shrink those cells as we saw. So last thing today is just to briefly cover matplotlib. So I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly, and we'll cover the details later. So first we're going to do is we're going to plot a single variable versus time. So first we make a figure, and then we use this plot function. So this is similar to MATLAB, plotting time, and then this chlorophyll column, and then we're going to add labels for those and then save it as a PDF. So it's going to plot chlorophyll versus time, and pretty basic. So that this has now been saved. If we go back to our terminal, we can see that we now have this Scriptsphere chlorophyll.pdf file.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So for me, it doesn't have a nice x-axis label with the actual time. It says something times 1 to the power, 10 to the power 18.
Okay.
I guess it just has the raw time, whatever it is.
Yeah, there might be something with your settings or your installation that's a little different, but I can come look at that. Yeah. Another thing we can do is we can make a loop where we can, let's say we just wanted to generate a plot for each one of these variables, and we didn't want to have to type them manually. So first thing we can do is we're going to rename the columns, and so we can use this rename function, and we can pass a dictionary of the columns, and we can say in place equals true. So it'll be done to the data frame in place. So now we've changed the names of these columns so they're a little more simple, although there's not units. So units would be good to have too, but so we've changed this columns aspect of the data frame. So now we can say for column in data1 columns, if that column is not the date, we're going to make a figure and then plot it just like we did before. And we're going to use this %s to fill in the name of the column. So it's going to generate a PDF file for each of those 4 variables. And it's going to show them in the window here, but it will also save the PDF on our machine. However, we might also want to plot all the response variables together. So the version with the date time as the index is good for this because it automatically will use that as if we don't specify an x-axis, it'll just use the index as the x-axis. And in fact, the data frame has its own plot function, which we can use if we're in a hurry. So we can say, let's look at this data 2 again, just to remind ourselves. So the index is now the date in this version, and we're going to convert that index to a date time object. So we did this before, but now we're actually going to make the change in our data frame. So now we can see that the index has now been changed to sort of the standard date time format, and Pandas now recognizes that this is a date time object and will handle it more appropriately. So here we're just going to make a figure, make a plot directly from the data frame. So we're not using we're using matplotlib under the hood, but we're not using the matplotlib function for this. All we're doing is using the matplotlib function for a legend. So what this will do is, now that it knows that these are dates, it can render them a little bit more carefully. And now it's on the y-axis, it's plotting these 4 different variables. Now, these all have different units, and so they doesn't look like a whole lot when plotted together because they look very flat. We're not seeing the variation. But for the purpose of the example, you can see how we can easily quickly plot all 4 of these columns on the same axis. So that's it. Finally, the name of pandas doesn't actually come from the bear. It comes from a portmanteau of panel data, which is an econometrics term for multidimensional structured data sets. The other thing, not just to show cute animals, but if we double click on this, we can see underlying this is actually a link to this image. So this is just grabbing it from the internet. This name pandas is just the name of just an arbitrary name we can give to the image. But the main thing is this hyperlink, which will then, when we execute it, will generate the image. So there's a lot you can do in this notebook environment that is pretty handy.